Welcome to the Zapata brand. And now, your host, George Zapata.
The long-awaited podcast with Jason Kingery.
Wow. Thanks for having me, George.
Hey, it's a pleasure to have you here.
I'm sure it is.
We don't know exactly where this conversation is going to go, but we're going to start off where most of my conversations start when I do the podcast. But first, I wanted to tell you thanks for coming out. I know you have a million things going on. Start of the school year, it's kind of a little goofy for you, your schedule, doing youth sports. Yep. Like you've always done. So real briefly, if you can, give me an idea as to who Jason Kingery was growing up in let's start at elementary school, going up there.
Growing up, well, I grew up in southern West Virginia, a little town called Madison, West Virginia, Boone County. Down in West Virginia, you go by the counties. You don't go by the towns or the cities. When people ask you where you're from, you say what county. So I'm from Boone County, West Virginia. Mm-hmm. And when people in this area ask me, well, where's Boone County, West Virginia? I tell them, Hatfield and McCoy's. And then everyone goes, ooh, Hatfield and McCoy's. I go, yeah. And they go, that's really deep. And I go, yeah, that's really deep. So
yeah, deep Virginia and West Virginia.
West Virginia, easy.
Yeah, West Virginia. That is, you don't realize how country and backwards that is. Not to say that it is now. It's a little more, but it is.
It's back. I mean, people think these are mountains around here in the Wyoming Valley. Mm-hmm. These are molehills. They're mountains down there. Yeah. Like people live in the hollers. Mm-hmm. If you get more than 5 or 6 hours of sunlight down there, that's a good day because the mountains are so high, and where the sun goes, it's always behind the mountains. But, I grew up in it's a coal town, or used to be a coal town. Actually, Boone County is where coal was discovered back in like 1765 or 18, I don't know, John Peters Alley. So it's an old coal town, like Shamokin, Mount Carmel, kind of like that. Yeah. So grew up in that town. Unfortunately, I lost my parents at an early age.
And that was one of the first things I wanted to ask you about. Okay, so it was your father first or your mother first?
My father.
Father first. At the age of 4?
Two. I do not remember my father, Kingery.
Was there an accident? Or?
Yes, it was. He died in a house fire.
Oh, wow.
Yes, he died in a fire. We got out. He didn't. I don't remember him. Like I said, I was 2 years old. Right. My older brother remembers a little bit. But unfortunately, he passed. They said it was electrical, So that, I guess that was the beginning of Jason Kingery. Then, unfortunately, 2 years later, my mother passed away from ovarian cancer.
That when I read your back, because I know you from here. Yeah, I don't know you from previously where you were from. But when I read the bio and I came across, I said, "Oh my God!" That to be a kid at that age.
Yes.
Yes. And so it's tough on you both. Obviously financially, because you'd have to obviously go to your grandmother's.
Correct. So, I lost my mother. I do remember her a little bit. People say, and I was 4, about ready to turn 5. And I remember a little bit about my mother. Unfortunately, all I remember is her being sick. That's when chemo treatments were brutal on the body. Yeah. I remember her losing her hair and throwing up a lot. And I hadn't even started school yet. So I was at home while this was going on. And I just watched how my mom, she fought, and unfortunately she, succumbed to cancer, and it was tough. So what happened after that, and I remember all this stuff. My grandmother, who was my mom's mom, took me and my brother in, and she raised us. But before that, a few things, me and my brother, because there was so much going on with the state and everything. This is back in 1979, 80. There was no paperwork done about who's going to get me and my brother. So we were shipped off to a group home for a while.
Wow. So they wouldn't immediately give it to your grandmother?
No. And like I tell everyone now, when you have kids, have a living will. That is the first thing me and my wife did, have a living will, because that was tough. It was right when I turned 5, take us out of the house, put us in this group home. Lawyers have to deal with everything, And
so your grandmother did not live in the house with your father?
Yes, she did.
She did.
But she had to get custody of us. You with me?
Yeah.
So they had, my mother and father, they didn't have a living will. They didn't have, well, our sons will go here and there because everything happened so fast. At least that's what I was told.
Right.
And it just, it was bad times. You know, here I'm young like that, but everything got worked out. My grandmother took me and my brother in, and my brother is 3 years older than me. But I can remember the first day when we got to my grandmother's house, she took me and my brother down the steps to the basement and showed us how to wash clothes. And I'm sitting there like, oh, I'm like 5 years old. What's going on here?
Right.
She said, I don't have time to wash your clothes. So if you want clean clothes, you're going to have to learn to clean them. Okay. All right. Come upstairs. She goes, hey, I just bought this new invention, the microwave. Believe it or not, the microwave. She's like, I'm going to show you how to make your own meals. I'm going to show you how to make a sandwich. That's what you're going to live on, because I have to work to try to have ends meet for our family. Okay. So I learned how to put the breakfast burrito or whatever in the microwave. 3 minutes, boom. I learned how to make a sandwich, and boom. That was, that was the beginning of, the tough times.
And just for context, how old was your grandmother at the time?
Oh gosh, man. So she would have been 56.
Okay.
50. So think about it. A 56-year-old lady taking in a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old.
And no father.
No. Her husband died in 1970 from
Holy
black
cow.
lung. I'm sure you've heard of black lung.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And now my dad's side of the family, there's 13 of them. So he had 12 brothers and sisters. All right. At that time, only one had passed. Now there's only like 6 or 7 left. But they didn't really, I don't know. They came around, but they weren't really around. Does that make any sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. They always wanted to see us do good, and they helped us out every now and then. But, I still love them to death. I don't talk to them as much, but it was just one of those things. I do know my uncle in Florida, who's still alive. He put a bid. He wanted to raise me and my brother, and now he has quite a bit of money. But my grandmother was, she wanted us.
Yeah.
So, but, then you sit back and you think, why did she want us? Well, that's all she had left. Her daughter was dead. Her husband was dead. She had 2 grandchildren. So she was dead set on getting us. And that's where it all began.
Right. So how was, you weren't obviously in a home, a foster home when you started school. You went to elementary, you started school with your grandmother.
Yes, I started elementary. And that's a crazy part too. Because have you ever heard this phrase, latchkey babies? You know what a latchkey baby?
No.
And no one knows. So a latchkey baby is when you're 5 and 8 years old, you can't be left at your house by yourself when there's no adult supervision there. So my grandmother gave me and my brother a key to the house. And she said, do not let anyone know that you have this key to the house. Do not let anyone know that no one's here to watch you after school, because I'll be at work. Because if so, I won't be able to keep you. So we kept that a secret. We'd get off the bus, walk down the street, look around, make sure no one's around, open the door, go in the house and hang out until she got home. And her job was minimum wage. Hell, back in 1980, probably 50 cents. I don't know. But she tried. We grew up pretty rough. We didn't have much.
Now, West Virginia, just by looking it up back in the 80s, I was looking up doing it. The median income was in the 12,000 range.
No doubt. And
12,000.
And we weren't in the median
You
range.
weren't in the median.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. That's median range. That's husband, wife, child.
Yeah. I can tell you, George, like, do you guys remember this? Ronald Reagan cheese?
Yeah.
Commodity cheese?
I didn't have it. My mother never got that at the point. She never did. But unfortunately, the situation is a little different. Meaning that's not a knock on anyone who does need government assistance.
No. Hell no.
That isn't a knock. So I'm not saying that, but we heard of it and everyone was like, oh, it wasn't that it wasn't accepted. You were looked at differently, but the situation is different. Your grandmother was giving 2 children at 50 some years old.
Yeah.
You have to do that. I do believe there should be a safety net. There should absolutely be a safety net in this country. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. Because of a situation like that. I was fortunate in the fact that my grandmother and my mother lived together. We were there.
Awesome.
So it was a different scenario. So again, not going back, not knocking on that. And that was something that was known. They give you cheese, and what else did they give you in there? Crackers.
All I remember is the cheese.
The
because
cheese.
I love cheese. That is my favorite thing to eat. And it's probably because I can remember we get a ticket and we'd have to walk down to the high school, which was 2 blocks from our house, Scott High School, which, my alma mater. And we would go down there, me and my brother, and we'd stand in line and give them that ticket. And we'd walk back home with a block of cheese.
Yeah.
And we would eat on that block of cheese. And how about potato soup? You ever had potato soup?
No.
Why do you think we ate potato soup? Potatoes are what?
Cheap.
They're cheap. So my grandmother would make a big pot of potato soup, and we'd have to eat off that for a week.
Ours was rice and beans.
Okay.
That was pretty popular in ethnic, Spanish background. Rice and beans was cheap. It's cheap.
Yeah, cheap. It's cheap.
And that's why we lived. That was a very. My grandma did cook though. She did cook.
Yeah.
She was a good cook until she got a little wacky there at the end.
My grandmother she could do anything with a potato.
Yeah, but you made it what you had with what you had.
Man. Now I will say, have you ever heard of bologna salad? You've heard of chicken salad?
Yeah,
because you got chicken salad here.
Yeah, I heard it, and it's terrible. I think it's terrible.
Well, see, I was about ready to say that was like our steak dinner when she made bologna salad. We were like, wow,
spam was ours.
Spam.
We did that, and it's stuff that shit. But again, what you went through at that point, before you get to your, more formative years, that made you and molded you who you were.
You better believe it.
Okay,
you better believe it.
And you're someone who has a lot of conviction. And you stand by your morals. And I just had an interview the other day about a guy who has a similar situation where his morals are unbelievable. His character is unbelievable too. So as you're going through, now your grandmother comes in, she's teaching you how to cook, she's teaching you how to clean, get the stuff that you need to survive, basically survive. Because you're gonna learn at an early age that you're not gonna depend on, number one, her being there, and number two, you're not gonna depend on someone giving you free handouts.
Correct. And that was difficult because I can remember there were times like when I started playing sports in youth, excuse me, my grandmother, she barely came to the games because she had to work. She would show up every now and then, and I would sit around and I'd see all these parents at their kids' games, and but we were a tight-knit community, and I ended up making some really good friends in grade school all the way through high school, and we're still close, and they're going to be watching this. They're going to actually subscribe to
the
this.
channel, please. Yes,
Michael Stevens, Toby Price, Chris Miller, Eric Duty.
Well, let me ask you a question because of that, because I went through something similar to that. How did you feel? Because maybe we felt the same way. When your parents weren't there, there was no one. My mom tried. My mom gave us anything she could, but she could, all she could give us is love.
Yeah,
because she didn't have the money to do that. Yeah. Which it's what it is.
That's what makes us similar, man.
That's right, man. We're there, brother.
Yeah,
I mean, that's why I think we connected the way we did.
Correct.
When we first came in, we had the same similar story. My mom worked a lot, but then my mom went into a situation where she was left with nothing. Husband leaves, 3 boys, growing boys that are, tend to be in trouble. Boys are in trouble. And then you see all these other kids, and I'll never forget this other story that I'll go to, getting all this stuff, and then you're there over in the side. Your mom wasn't there. It sucks. It sucks.
It sucks. And I will tell you this. My grandmother told me and my brother, we will never use the excuse of your mom and dad not being around because nobody wants to hear it. And I never did. I never used the excuse, I don't have a mom and dad. I don't have, it wasn't allowed. She told us that, like, you're never going to use that excuse. And I never have. To this day, I still.
That's very powerful. That's powerful.
Never. And I see kids nowadays, they use every excuse that they can. And I'm like, geez, man, I'm like you, and you got to think back in the 80s, there wasn't, me and my brother, we weren't the normal kids because everyone had their mom and dad still. There wasn't a lot of divorced families at the time. And you'd never heard of both mom and dad being dead. So we were the outcast,
I think the mid 80s is when the deadbeat dads started coming, where they started you started seeing escalate.
Yes.
To a point where it was like there's not really many fathers in the home.
Correct.
And you really started seeing the wildness go on, the drug use, the crime.
And see, that goes back to my grandmother's story. So when I was in 3rd grade, I wanted to play basketball. Like, I loved it at an early age. Not football. And my grandmother said, I'm taking you to football practice today. I said, I don't want to go. I don't want to play football. She said, you're going to go play football. I'm making you play. I'm crying. Why are you making me do this? Because you got to grow up to be a man. You got to play a man's sport. Yeah. You got to be around other men. There's no men in this house. All right. I can remember her put me in this 1978 Chevette. Remember those little
oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what we had. Jump in there, boom. She takes me down, signs me up. There's a guy named Joe Eddie Griffith, who I'll talk about here in a little bit because he's a phenomenal guy. They sign me up, put pads on me. You know, first week I'm out there, I'm getting the piss beat out of me, you know, bruises all over me. My grandmother looks at me like a week later, are you ready to quit? I get it. I don't like bruises on you. And they went, no, I love it. And she smiled. I said, I love it. And it did. Like her pushing me into doing that made me tougher mentally and physically. And I ended up playing, you know, all the way through, had a good high school career, you know, could have had a good college career, but that went sideways. But the little things that she did like that, powerful.
From someone who's now, she was a grandmother. She wasn't your mother, but she's now a grandmother.
And she's probably 59, 60 at this
59, 60. That she's cut from a different cloth, to be quite honest with you.
Correct.
You know, and maybe it's the culture down there and how she was. She probably went through the depression.
She went through the depression. She told me many stories living in a coal camp, the things that she had to go through. My grandmother didn't have a pair of shoes until she was 14 years old.
And how about a bathroom running water?
They had outhouses.
Yeah.
Now we had a bathroom.
Yeah.
Okay. But there was times too. I remember from 5th grade to 8th grade, George. It was tough times for us. I don't know what happened with finances or whatnot, but sometimes we didn't have electricity.
Oh, I could tell you that story. We had the same thing.
Yeah, you know, I had one pair of jeans, one pair of sweatpants. I didn't have a full closet. You know,
that actually caused not having that stuff. Actually caused me to miss school as much as I did.
Yeah,
you know, everyone who would watch the podcast and whatever, they don't really know why I never went to school. I never went to school. Yeah. Barely went.
I remember you telling me
never
that.
made a complete week of school, and I didn't because I didn't have the clothes.
Yeah, you were embarrassed
because I was like, you know, we went to public school. You went to a private school, it'd be different, or a Catholic school, you'd have the same uniform. No one knows, which is why I'm a big proponent on everyone should have a uniform.
I agree.
School.
I agree.
They should have a uniform because I know from that situation what it's like and how it affects somebody, the way it affected me. And I just said, you know what, forget it. I'm not going to go to school.
Yeah.
It's brutal because kids are brutal. They just are. It's not that they're bad kids. Just that's how it is.
And kids are brutal, and that's funny you bring that up because I remember a couple kids tried to make fun of me, and I kicked their ass.
Yeah, now and you look now. And I mean that shows you the person you were. You were a very proud man.
Yeah.
Nowadays it'd be a little difficult to do that because you can't do it.
You can't do it.
You'd have a big problem. But not knowing that kid who got his ass kicked probably ain't gonna open his mouth too much more to anybody who they think this guy might have some problems at home because they don't know. They don't. But you shouldn't treat anybody that way.
No.
Just regardless.
No.
And that's because you don't know what's going on behind their closed doors. When I had the interview with Jeremy Hassel last month, and I talked to him, he didn't know. It's like, I didn't know that about you. That, you know, no lunches, there were situations the electrical got shut off. We didn't have a phone.
Yeah.
And there was no cell phones then. No. That was for the only drug dealers and rich people. So we didn't have that. Yeah. So it was really strange to see that we kind of faked it and kind of, people didn't realize that. Yeah. And that turns into a situation. So I understand where your point of view is and how it builds what's going on inside you.
Better believe it.
So now you go to high school.
Go to high school, my outlet was sports.
Mm-hmm.
Love sports. Played 4 years varsity football, 4 years. Well, we only had freshman basketball and then 3 years of varsity basketball. Had a good career, real good career. But I also at that time too had to work. And I ended up selling produce on the side of the road for this guy, Joe Eddie Griffith, who got me enrolled. Now, Joe Eddie was a good friend of my mom's back in high school. So he knew our family and everything. And this guy taught me how to freaking work.
Yeah.
You want to hear a good story?
Bring it.
So me and his son one day were sitting there as he was on a produce run. All right. It's probably 100 degrees that day. And he pulls in. We have no customers. And me and Shane, that's his name, Shane Griffith, we're sitting there like, this is awesome. We're getting paid to do nothing. All right. Like that's every kid's dream. All right. He pulls in, kind of looks around and goes, "Slow day, huh?" We went, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." He goes, "All right." He goes, "Hey, do me a favor. Take that table there and go take it apart." We're like, "Why?" He's like, "Just do what I tell you to do." All right. We went out there. We got the hammer and everything, took it apart, laid everything down. Took 10, 15 minutes. Walked back in. He said, "All right, go put that table back together." And Shane looks at him and goes, "Dad, why?" He goes, "I'm not going to sit here and pay you guys to sit around. You're going to do something." So we went back out there and we had to put that table together. So, but he taught me how to work. Hey, when I'm 14, 15, 16 years old and I'm back in the back of a truck getting 300-400 watermelon out by myself, that's tough.
Oh, it's tough.
Oh, people don't realize cantaloupe, that. And on top of that, my favorite holiday now is Thanksgiving, because it used to not be, because the day after Thanksgiving, me, Shane, his other son, Todd, and another kid, whoever they hired, we would have to stake over 100 Christmas trees. You know what stake?
Oh, yeah.
We would have to take railroad ties,
Yep.
pound them in the ground. And then once he got back from North Carolina that evening, we'd have to take them off the truck, put them on the stake, tie them up. It was like an 18, 20-hour day. It was miserable. But back to my high school days, I mean, that was a big part of my high school days, working as I played sports and try to have a social life and do all that stuff.
How were your grades at that point? just thought I'd throw it out there, just considering you're an educator.
They were decent. They weren't great. I could have done a lot better. I could have. My grades were much better in college because I knew it was do or die when you go to college. My grades were B, C's. I had a couple D's, maybe an F every now and then. But I had coaches watching over me too.
Right.
And then it goes back to another story about my grandmother. My 10th grade year, we're playing basketball. And I played quite a bit the first 2 games, and I did well. And then it was like 2 or 3 games, I didn't even get to play. All right. And my coach, I didn't go talk to him or anything. I was busting my, in practice. I'm like, what's going on here? But I noticed there were a lot of parents going up to him and saying stuff to him after games, after practice and stuff. So, my wheels are turning a little bit. We played Polka High School, Polka Dots. That was their nickname. The Dots, Polka Dots. All right. Out of Charleston, West Virginia. We ended up getting beat, I think, 44-41. I come in the house that night. My grandmother, of course, did not go to the game because she didn't have the money to get in. All right. I take my bag and I throw it as hard as I can, and I hit her china cabinet, which that was her precious piece of furniture. GDU, what the GD? My grandmother now, she was a cusser. All right. GDU, what the GD? I called her Mama. I said, Mama, they won't play me. She goes, what do you mean they won't play you? I had 2 good games at the beginning of the year. In the past 3 games, he won't play me. I need you to go down there and talk to the coach. She laughed at me. I said, why are you laughing? She said, let me make something real clear to you. I'm not always going to be around to battle your battles. So you got 2 options. You either get better or you talk to the coach yourself. So I go to bed that night in my crankety twin bed that wasn't even a real bed. And I'm laying there and I'm thinking, you bitch, you're supposed to, that's your job. Like, you're supposed to protect me, That conversation 20, 30 years later when she died in 2005, when I was looking in her casket, it hit me. I'm like, holy shit, this is what she's talking about. She's not always going to be around to battle my battles.
Right.
She's gone. I have to stand up for myself.
Right.
And I did. I went to the coach and I talked to him. I said, what's going on here? He told me. I busted my rear end a little bit more in practice. I got to play more. You know what I mean?
Now, he said if you did work harder in practice?
If I guess I thought I was working hard in practice, but honestly, I think he was doing the political BS.
Okay.
Playing kids that had money and, doing that, which you see a lot of nowadays in sports, especially on the high school level, who's scratching our back a little bit better, But it was a teachable moment because at that time when I was in 10th, 11th grade, I knew I wanted to be a high school coach. I knew. So I was learning what not to do as a coach.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but that was probably the most sticking point ever, my grandmother teaching me that, because I wish to God parents nowadays would do that with their kids, because now I'm going to go get the coach. We're going to rip into him. And I was taught from an early age, you battle your own battles. I'm not going to battle them for you. So.
Yeah, and that's a tough subject. Oh, do you want to get onto that subject, or do you want to go to your college career?
What subject?
Well,
you ask me whatever, man. I will talk about anything.
So we'll get to your college in a minute, because since we're on this topic now.
Yeah.
Okay. Why? Now, you've been a high school coach for a very long time.
God, this is my 26th year, George.
Okay. Why is it so difficult now, as opposed to, let's say the Curry years, the Paterno years? Why is it so hard now to be a coach, or why is it hard for now a person to say, I want to be a coach to players? Why is it so hard now as opposed to what it was before?
Social media. I've put social media out there. I mean, it's so easy now for someone to get on, say, Facebook and say, Coach Smith's an idiot, you know, and then you have like 50 likes and 100 people replying. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I don't know what happened, because like parents, and not all parents, there's great parents out there and there's great kids, but like some of these parents, they're just crippling their kids by, you know, saying, you know, I call them dinner time conversations. Your coach sucks. He doesn't know what he's doing. You know, well, blood's thicker than water. Blood is family. Mm-hmm. The coaches is water. And like, once that kid hears that from his parents or family or whatever, then he or she is going to believe that. And it's sad, because you see now, like, you can't find people to coach no more.
No,
you can't. And you used to be able, like, I can remember when I got in it in 98, like, you were lucky to be a volunteer assistant. You know what I mean? Now you can just jump right in and almost be a varsity head coach, because nobody wants to do it.
And that you got to throw into that mix referees, umpires.
Yes,
they don't want to do it.
They don't want to do it.
And I tell you, it is out of control.
It's out of control.
I've seen it. I saw it 2 weekends ago, and you know, unbelievable. Yeah. And I haven't got a call back from that guy. He's going to get a nice little podcast from him. But what I'm saying is, how do you correct that now? Because I think we're too far gone. That's just my opinion. Just because I'm going through it now in high school, I'm just seeing the kids starting to go into. My kids are in seventh grade and 5th grade. They're going into that now with Landon. He's going into the junior high.
Correct.
So it's a little more serious.
Once you go in 7th grade, it gets cranked up a little bit more. Yeah.
How do you correct that, or not correct it? How do you make it more enjoyable for everybody?
As a coach
And as a parent. Like, I can't say with you, because, you know, I know how you are with your kids.
Yeah.
Okay. Why would I, if I'm a kid, go out and play a sport if I feel that there's going to be issues around everything? How do you talk to the parents first and say, this is how I run the team, or do you tell the kids and then have it trickle down?
No, you have a parent, player, coaches meeting, and you lay everything out and tell them what you're going to do.
Can you get one of those?
What do you mean?
Can you call a meeting? Would the school allow you to call a meeting?
Yes.
And have everyone come in and say, this is it. This is my rules.
Yes.
If we do not abide by these rules, we're gone.
Correct. And I did that for years.
And you can do that.
You can do that.
Okay.
Yes.
So why is there still continued issues?
Because that's the problem. Like, most coaches, I shouldn't say most, but there are some coaches out there, if their star players doing whatever, that's okay. But number 18 on the depth chart, I'll get rid of him. And if you're not consistent with your rules, then you're going to get buried. You know what I mean? George, you know me. I'm very upfront and honest. And I don't care if you're number 1 or number 20. I'm going to treat you the same. Mm-hmm. I always said, if you're going to be a coach, you need to make sure you establish your rules, your program, and you run it the way that you feel like it needs to be ran, and do the best of your ability. And at night, when you lay your head on your pillow, did I do those kids justice? You know,
okay.
I think sometimes that it gets a little bit off topic because the coach sways a little bit. And then on top of that too, it goes back to like what was going on back in 1989 or 90, parents getting in the ear of a school board member or parents getting in the ear of an AD or a principal or something. And then you don't have any support, and then it just starts to collapse like dominoes.
Mm-hmm. So you started your career, when you first started your career as a basketball coach?
Yes.
Okay. You were in West Virginia, correct?
So my senior year of college, I was a 9th grade boys basketball coach at University High School.
Okay.
And then I ended up going to North Carolina. After I got my degree and everything, went to North Carolina.
As a teacher?
Teacher coach.
Okay.
Yeah. As a head varsity basketball coach at the age of 24, which is crazy. And driving a bus, because down there the coaches have to drive the bus. You should see me.
I don't know if I'd be in a bus with you.
Oh, it was crazy too.
You.
No. And what they do down there is like you have your varsity girls, varsity boys, and your cheerleaders all ride on one bus.
Oh Lord!
So me and the girls coach down there, Coach Hoyle, I'll never forget. He was about 5'2", great guy, older guy. We'd flip a coin to see who won, and I think he won every time because I think he had a double-sided coin or something. So here I was driving the bus, but I went down there and I coached in football, basketball, and I went from North Carolina to Richmond, Virginia, back to Charleston, West Virginia, Madison, West Virginia, and then I moved to the glorious Berwick, PA.
Well, okay, so let's take that because that's where I first met you here in Berwick.
Yes.
How does that job come up, and when did you decide we're going to move? Now, were you married at the time?
When?
When you were going to move to Berwick, which I have a great story, by the way.
Yes, I was married. So
my
wife and I, Maria, she's originally from Berwick.
Oh, I know she is.
Yeah.
She worked for me for about 72 hours.
And she still talks about that.
I didn't even know.
I
had no idea she worked for me.
You talk about funny, man.
I had no idea because she went to a party that I was at and with you.
Yeah.
And she said, "Yeah, I worked for you." I'm like, "What?" And then then she told me a story. I said, "You know what I do?" Yeah. I do remember. She thought it was going to be like baking cakes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
she couldn't do the bagels or something, right?
No, it was a regular. Like I'm like, what? Then again, hold on. Then again, if you think about it, there wasn't bagels here. So her thinking baking, baking, she thought like cakes and stuff like that, which she said I could do that.
Yeah.
She's like, but I have to make sandwiches. Like, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So it's a New York thing.
I think you just gave her $20.
I said, hey, I don't think this is going to work out. Yeah, and it's funny that she laughs about today because that's how many people I've hired. I didn't even know.
That was
cool. I didn't even know.
Great. I said, are you sure it was him, Maria? And you, Jason? Yes.
Yes, 100%. Yes. I knew. Then when I put two and two together, I said, oh my God, yes, I do know her now because again, I knew her as Maria Kingery.
No, Maria Martinez.
But I knew her as Maria Kingery.
Okay.
I didn't put that together that she worked for me as Maria Martinez.
Yes.
Because our boys were friends. And I'm thinking, Maria Kingery. I never hired Maria Kingery.
Yeah.
No. I said, Jason just moved here.
Yeah.
And then I just realized, okay, yes, she was from here.
Yes.
So now you meet your wife in Virginia?
Richmond, Virginia. So we opened up a new high school down in Richmond, Virginia. It was called Hanover High School. Huge high school, beautiful high school. I didn't even know her the first year because the school was so big and the faculty was so big. And then one thing led to another. We met actually at the school. She came to one of my basketball games, said something to the guidance counselor.
Hey, who's that good? Who's
that hot tamale? Who I was probably running up and down the sideline kicking stuff. You see me, coach.
Yeah.
But we also had very good basketball teams down there, too. We were making pushes for state titles. So she's probably like, I want to jump on that bandwagon.
Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't, Jason?
Who wouldn't, man? But we ended up, dating and then got engaged, got married in Richmond. And it's funny. And when she hears this, she'll laugh, too. So we got married on July 1st, 2006. Mm-hmm. July 3rd, 2006, our honeymoon was in a U-Haul moving back to Boone County, West Virginia.
Oh, you were coming back?
We moved back. I moved back to West Virginia because I wanted to be a coach at my alma mater.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And she agreed to it. She was young and dumb. She's like, yeah, I'll move anywhere,
Yeah, but she's a teacher. She has a teacher's degree.
She got a teaching job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then we were there 5 years. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of success down there because I had great kids, great coach. Like, it was very supportive. Okay. Right. And I can remember we played for a state championship back in 2011. We got beat, should have won a damn thing. And I still regret that. Still regret it. But we just came short. But we were walking off the floor and Maria came down Okay. The boys weren't there. Ashton was only like 5, 6 months old, and Mason was like 2 or 3, and he was with our neighbors. And she said, you know, Jason, it's tough you being a football coach, basketball coach, all the time you're putting in. She's like, I'd really like to move back closer to home to my parents. And I had told her when we started dating, when we got engaged, and even when we was married, I never want to move to Northeast Pennsylvania because every time I came up here, it was snow and ice, George.
Yeah.
I was up here in the winter. I don't want to move there. I want to stay south. One thing led to another, and you know, we looked into it. I saw the teaching pay is very good compared to the South. You know, the insurance is very good compared to the South.
Yeah.
The retirement is very good compared to the South. And it was a family move because I was somewhere where we could have won a lot of state championships and la-di-da-di-da-di, and no one would bother us and this and that. But it was more to get closer back to her parents, you know, her extended family. And I started thinking to myself too, like, you know, I didn't grow up around my, you know, extended family. This would be great for our kids to come closer to their extended
And what
family.
year was that?
2011. I got hired in July 2011.
Your grandma had already passed.
She passed in 2005.
2005.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. She died when I was in Richmond.
It was an easier move.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. So when I moved back to West Virginia, my grandmother, I didn't anticipate ever moving back, but they called me because, trust me, like high school sports at some of these schools, they do call and recruit you and say, hey, we'll give you this, this, and this. And that's what Scott High School did. They called me because I was content. I loved Richmond, Virginia. You talking about a nice place. If you've never been there, go. That was my dream job, Hanover High School. But when your alma mater calls you back and say, hey, we want to get this program turned around, it's hard to turn it down.
Yeah. And I just recently came back from Fairfax.
Yeah.
Is that close to Richmond?
No, Fairfax is nuts, man.
It is crazy there.
That's Northern Virginia.
Oh,
Richmond's
it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, Richmond's crazy too, but Fairfax is crazy, crazy, crazy.
Oh, it's nutty. The prices are insane.
Yeah.
It's just not. I mean, it's basically all politicians that live there.
That's all it is.
It is nuts over there. So you got to understand. So I didn't realize how different, but that is way different than Richmond, obviously.
Yes. Northern Virginia and Southern Virginia are two different worlds.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people in Richmond work up there. Like I remember most of my parents, they worked up there for the government and stuff, made big money.
Oh, you make big money up there.
The school that my wife and I were teaching at, Hanover High School, we were driving beat up trucks to go to work. The teachers, these kids were coming in the nicest vehicles. They had money.
When I went to Virginia, went to Fairfax, and you know, Michelle just bought that Benz.
Yeah.
So I rolled up thinking I'm gonna have a very nice car. No, a Bentley right next to me. I said, "Holy cow!" I said, "Oh, I got to back this back up and put it back." It was just different. It's different up there. So you're, you know, so people understand you're the rural area at that point, but it's a place you wanted to coach.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah.
So do you get the call to come to Berwick, or did they call you?
Well, that's the funny part, George.
And that ends part 1 of the Jason Kingery interview series. Part 2 is coming up next.